ActionSA has registered its opposition to the enrolment of pupils whose parents are illegally in South Africa. This follows a directive by the Department of Education, which is part of the amendments to the South African School Act, which has recently been passed. For more on this, we are now joined by Lerato Ngobeni, who is an ActionSA MP, a member of Parliament, and the Parliamentary Oversight Committee on Home Affairs, as well as being joined by the Patriotic Alliance's Charles Cilliers, who is its NEC member and head of strategy. Good evening to both of you. And Lerato, I'd like to start with you. As ActionSA, you've been pretty vocal about issues of foreign nationals. Tell us more when it comes to the placement of undocumented children in our public schools.
Thanks so much, Masa. And I really want to wish everybody, including everybody on the panel, for a happy New Year, compliments of the new season. Ours has always been a very clear stance on the with regards to the fact that we as South Africans must prioritize the citizens of South Africa. As it stands right now, we have more than 300,000 learners in public schools in Gauteng, Western Cape, and KZN, who are children of enrolled as children of undocumented foreign nationals. And for us, we are not saying that these children do not deserve a space in the education sector, because every child does. However, it is very important for South Africans to regard themselves as the first citizens of this nation. And for us, it's very unfortunate that this is the circumstances in which we find ourselves. I recently just came from Zimbabwe, and I was very shocked by the fact that Zimbabwe is very an empty country as we stand right now. There's no one there because everybody is here. And our country really needs to, in its bilateral discussions, really need to prioritize the fact that Zimbabwe needs to do better for its citizens, because all of them are here and we ourselves are unable to cater for our own citizens. And so it's very unfortunate, but from where we sit, it's very unfortunate that South Africa itself is unable to cater for the citizens that are trying to get into the schooling system. You've seen the queues in Ekurhuleni, in Soweto, etc., and across the country. And so for us, it's a very unfortunate situation. But as it stands, because we are, adhering to human rights and everything else that's happening around the globe, and also in the SADC region, we have to respond. But as ActionSA, we are saying that South Africans really need to be prioritized, and this is one of those moments where it's a very moot moment, but it's also a very sad moment, because you've got to balance the tension between human rights. You've got to balance the tension between citizen rights, and then you've also got to balance the tension between what is right. So this is where we stand at the moment. So that's very unfortunate, but this is where we find ourselves.
Now, Charles, as the Patriotic Alliance, like ActionSA, you've also been pretty vocal when it comes to the issue of illegal foreign nationals, and you share, I would assume, a similar sentiment to ActionSA when it comes to the placement of undocumented children. But as we know, our law doesn't prohibit this from happening. In fact, the law encourages it to say that all children, not some, or legal ones or documented ones, can have a place in our schooling system. It says all children can have a place in our schooling system, regardless whether their parents are here in the country legally or not. Is this not something that you also factor in as you're raising in your concerns, that it's actually part of the law?
Yes, good evening, Masa. Look, I think that we've been vocal from our President Gayton McKenzie to Deputy President Kenny Kunene down. They've done work, they've been to actual schools and seen the situation on the ground. And our primary issue with the way that the country is being run at the moment through these laws is that we're making the country more attractive to people who want to migrate to the country illegally, right? And I think that's a problem, is that if you look at the policies and how we're implementing things, we're actually incentivizing people to come here. And that is going to create more people wanting to come here, right? And that's going to prejudice South African citizens who are going to have to stand in these queues, as Lerato has said, to compete for services that are limited and diminishing by the day, with people that effectively realize that if they can get across a river or somehow sneak across into whatever border, however they do it, that there are opportunities for them to get healthcare, education, and all sorts of services that are not going to be denied to them on the basis of the human rights that we uphold in this country. But we have been swayed too far towards just dispensing human rights to all comers. And we've forgotten that we have a basic obligation to our citizens as a government, that our primary obligation is to our citizens. And in approaching things in the way that we are, we're actually abandoning our own citizens and throwing them to the wolves and saying, well, compete with people from all over the place. I mean, we know that many are from Africa, but there's people from further afield. You know, so this isn't really an African issue, but if you look at the growth rates that are projected for the continent, I mean, I was looking at stats the other day of people saying that Africa is going to have enormous growth rates, putting us at 4 billion people at some point during the course of the century. Now, if even just a fraction of those people say, well, life looks better in South Africa than it does wherever I am, be it Zimbabwe or wherever, how much pressure is that not going to put on our system? And are we not going to break and crack even further than we already have? So we need to start thinking today about the kinds of incentives that we're sending out there and the kind of message that we're sending out there. And of course, it starts with border control, right? But you can't keep saying, well, you know, even if we strengthen the border, you're just actually increasing the stakes and saying that the reward of getting across the border still remains positive for you. So people will just try harder and they'll fight harder to get across the border because life is so welcoming to them once they're here. And that's a problem. And if it was the same everywhere else, in other countries throughout Africa and so on, if they had the same generous human rights that gave everybody the same rights as us, then maybe that's a different story. But if you compare the way that other countries are being run, they're not quite so welcoming. You know, me as a South African, if I managed to find myself in any of the other 53 African countries and said, look, give me free healthcare, give my kids free education at a great level, etc., it's not going to be so easy for me. So I think there's an imbalance here, and we can't carry the weight of the world on our shoulders as South Africans. We have a lot of problems, and we need to fix those problems, and we can't fix everyone else's problems at the same time. So that's why, as the PA, we're saying that the patriotism that is in our name, we're the Patriotic Alliance, that, you know, patriotism and charity starts at home. So what message are we as government sending to our people when we insist on these policies? I don't think it's the right message, and I don't think, and our party doesn't, and the people who voted for us don't think so either.
Well, Lerato, you've just heard what Charles had to say as well, but also, isn't this a policy problem? And both your party and the Patriotic Alliance is now in government and possibly can raise concerns if it is a policy matter, because as it stands, what is happening is legal. What is happening in that the undocumented children are being placed in schools, because our national education policy requires for the schools to assist those parents to be able to get the correct documentation for those children. So they still need to be accepted. And this is what our policies say. And as Charles was saying, he was saying that we've swayed too far. So you were speaking about, you know, balancing these tensions. How do we then get to a happy middle?
So, you know, there's an adage that what is legal is not always what is right. Unfortunately, what is legal is not what is right. Section 29 of our Constitution guarantees the right to basic education for everyone, regardless of nationality, and documentation status. However, in terms of what is applicable and what is realized on the ground, we have to be able to, as a country, resonate with our own citizens in the same way that every other country is able to do. And so, I agree with you in terms of questioning and us being able to have the conversations that we need to have as a country, because at the inception of our democracy, we were wanting, because of the fights that we've had to fight and the injustices that we've had to endure, we wanted to make sure that each and every person who set foot in South Africa in particular was able to be accommodated and that nobody would suffer equal injustice. But we have now realized that there is unintended consequences to altruism, unintended consequences to the things that we may have aimed to do. But as a result of those things, we find ourselves at the quagmire in which we now find ourselves.
Yeah.
And so, at the point that we are at, ours would be to say, let us have a conversation that really is a balanced conversation between all of the interested stakeholders across, particularly in the SADC region, to talk about what this really means, because it's not fair, absolutely, on any account that South African school-going children or South African people, as a matter of course, should be suffering.
Lerato, I'm so sorry to interject there.
What they are suffering.
Lerato, I'm so sorry to interject there. This is a very important conversation, and hopefully we can continue with it. But unfortunately, we have run out of time, so hopefully we can continue it at another stage. Thank you so much to Charles Cilliers from the Patriotic Alliance and Lerato Ngobeni, who is from ActionSA. Unfortunately, we have run out of time.